When we sit down, it's time for the conversation, and because aviation is a global topic, we had to bring a global guest. Our guest today, Muhammad Ali Al-Bakri. He is the Regional Vice President, Africa and the Middle East for IATA. He's also a board member and a member of the Audit and Executives Committee, Saudi Cargo Company, member of the Executive Advisory Committee for the Faculty, King Abdulaziz University. He's the chairman of the Future Distribution Strategy Task Force, Arab Air Carrier Organization. He holds a Bachelor's of Science, Information Science, University of Pittsburgh, a Master's of Science Information, University of Pittsburgh, 9 publications, amongst them Mobile Travel Trends, How 13 Influencers See Things Differently in 2019, Africa and the Middle East Region, Transformation Initiative, among others. Today, on this episode of Metropole Debrief, we seek to find out how grave is the impact of COVID-19 on the aviation sector, what revival mechanisms can different governments and aviation companies explore, and why is it important to resuscitate and jumpstart the aviation sector for the sake of not just continental and regional economies, but global economies. Al-Bakri, thank you for making time.
Thank you for having me.
Let's just begin with the very first question, which is, I would like you to paint a visual picture for the viewer who's watching us at home. How grave is the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the aviation sector?
Well, unfortunately, it's been really bad, total devastation. The impact of COVID-19 and the government restrictions and travel bans and closing of airports and airspaces have really brought the industry to a ground halt. For 2020, we're going to see the traffic plummeting by 54%. That's a loss of 80 million passenger journeys in Africa. Of course, that has, other consequences and job losses. We've got about more than half of the related jobs in Africa, they are actually at risk of being lost. That's 3.5 million jobs. And of course, the total GDP impact in Africa will exceed $35 billion.
And why is this such a grave impact on Africa, particularly the sub-Saharan region? Because the impact of the virus in the region has not been as grave as we saw it in Asia and Europe, but with the much that we've been affected, what does this mean for the economics of this continent?
Well, it's the impact has been very much the same, to be honest with you, and all the continents globally. All the countries, all the continents have been severely impacted. The only difference maybe in Africa is the lesser impact in the domestic market and the domestic flights, because we're still lacking domestic connectivity in Africa. But in terms of international connectivity, Africa has been impacted as much as other places involved. It's proportional. However, we cannot say that Africa is less impacted. Africa, unfortunately, has been impacted as much as the rest of the world.
And speaking of international travel, we know that the African economy thrives and makes a big kill out of sectors like tourism and agriculture. And these sectors are codependent on aviation. How have they been affected by aviation being brought to a sudden halt by the pandemic?
You're absolutely right. Travel and tourism, they're intertwined. They feed on each other. They coexist, and the impact in Africa, again, has been a devastation, total devastation, both on travel and tourism. You know that travel and tourism employs more than 24 million people in Africa and contributes an excess of $169 billion to combined African economies, which really translates to 7.1% of the continent's GDP. So tourism have really suffered just as much as travel. It continues to suffer until today. But the hope is, as we restart the industry, we can still save this industry. And when we talk about, travel and tourism, we really talk about the entire industry, all its components, not only a specific sector.
Now, when you say that 24 million people have been employed by the aviation sector in the continent, and now the sector is coming to, has been brought to sort of a sudden halt, and revenues are not coming in, people are not traveling. You've seen the travelers' numbers drop drastically to about negative 98 in May. This will definitely have an impact on the revenue of these airlines, and to stay afloat, some of them are opting to lay off staff. We've seen Kenya Airways in Nairobi firing 1,500 employees, South African Airways, 4,700 jobs are on the line, and even internationally, Virgin Airlines, 3,000 jobs on the line. Is this the ultimate way to go to stay afloat for most of these aviation sectors or other companies?
The problem that the sector is having, and as you have so kindly indicated, revenues have dried up. Airplanes are grounded, passengers are not flying. So really, the airline companies, the entire sector, have lost their revenue sources. And because of that, they have resorted internally and they have done everything they could really to control their costs, to become more efficient. However, the problem is without the income and the revenue sources coming to these airlines, they are forced, unfortunately, to lay off people. And we have already started seeing airline companies, airports, and supporting sectors laying off people, and that will continue. This is why we continue to advocate and continue to plead our case to governments to please come forward and provide the required financial relief so we save these millions of jobs for the country.
Great. We'll come to financial relief very shortly. But in the meantime, we are beginning to see countries open up their borders. And Nairobi opened up on the 28th of August, rather. It opened up to international travel 1st of July. Nigeria opened up on the 28th of August. Ghana opened up just 2 days ago on the 1st of September. Mali, 25th of July. I know this is a good indication that travel will resume soon when borders are opened. But a couple of days ago when I attended an IATA briefing, Alexander was very quick to mention that reopening of borders has to be coordinated if it has to work in favor of the aviation sector. Please expand on that point.
Absolutely. We are delighted to see governments are actually taking these positive steps and deciding to open up their borders and lift the travel bans. However, unlike when these countries actually around the world, and Africa included, they did it in an uncoordinated manner when they first shut down. Going forward, as countries start to open up, we would like them really to coordinate this restart of the industry and adapt the internationally accepted standards of the health measures for restarting the industries as have been stipulated by ICAO in a seamless, coordinated, and cohesive, synchronized manner. Otherwise, we will have variations of rules and regulations and restrictions. And even, our countries are opening up, but they're requiring quarantine, for instance. They're requiring strict measures in terms of multiple testings and things like that. This will not help. So really, what we really need to go, we go back to basics. We encourage governments to synchronize, to work together, and to adapt the same set of rules and regulations that have been published and made available by ICAO and other international organizations.
What would be the basic fundamentals that would be needed to put in place, rather, to ensure a seamless transition of flying across African borders? Because as we know it, testing here is not as rampant as it should be, and disease patterns are also a little bit difficult to predict because of that factor.
Yeah, well, what we're calling for is really what all the international organizations have come forward, and they've developed a very cohesive plan that ensures the safety, the health, security of passengers, assures governments that air travel will not pose any further risks of respreading virus, but at the same time allows air travel to restart and help it to stand on its feet again. Now, what we really are calling for is a seamless and a serious, really, implementation of those rules. In a coordinated manner where countries really, use the same protocols, use the same procedures, use the same requirements. So at least passengers, we will be able to regain passenger confidence. We'll be able to adapt to this new operating models from an airlines and from airports perspective and passenger perspective. Therefore, eliminating confusions and multiple steps that are not necessary and have not been medically proven that are needed really to restart the industry in a safe and secure manner.
Now, we cannot rule out all forms of travel. In my country, for example, Kenya, domestic travel has resumed. South Africa, the same. What does this mean for local economies and the local aviation industry?
This is very positive, and we had predicted, months ago that, when the industry had completely shut down, that the restart is going to start really gradually. First with domestic traffic, and then, regional, and then long haul international travel. And we are so happy to see countries such as Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria, and others really starting, domestic traffic. And this will allow governments and will allow all the players to test in practical terms these health-related measures that are put in place for the safety and the security of the traveling public. It will also prove to governments around the world, in Africa and around the world, that governments are serious about the continuation of fighting COVID while opening up their economies and allowing air travel, to take place. So there is a positive step in the right direction, and we applaud those countries who have taken it. We encourage the rest to please speed up and take similar steps.
Now, we are seeing governments trying to play their role in jump-starting the aviation industry, and we've seen some of them give different airlines and the aviation sectors in their country bailout money. Now, it might work in Europe, it might work in Asia, American Airlines, but I want us to do a differential diagnosis for the African continent. What sort of government interventions are needed here?
Well, government intervention is necessary around the world, and in Africa is not an exceptional case, to be honest with you. IATA has worked with our allied industry associations for months now, and we have successfully secured pledges from international donors, financial institutions, amounting to more than $10 billion of relief funds to African nations. What we really need to do is for governments to unlock the bureaucracies, speed up the process, and kindly really move this financial aid to the airlines, to the travel and tourism sectors to keep it alive. Otherwise, if we continue in the same bureaucratic process, slow process, these airlines are on life support. They are, they will go under. Let's be very frank about this. And while airline will go under, they will take with them millions of jobs that are badly needed in Africa. So what we really need to do is for governments to please unlock the bureaucracy, unlock the roadblocks, allow these financial relief funds really to reach to the airlines, to the sector, to allow them to stay alive and be open again and continue to rebuild the economies of Africa. Also, governments really have to take a closer look at the policies and the procedures they have in place, make sure that they have proper flexible regulations, to allow private funding, foreign investors to come and help the industry and the sector really regain its life and move forward and help Africa in achieving its greater potentials.
Aviation in Africa is not as vibrant as it is in different continents. And you've just mentioned that if we do not inject funding into that industry, it might go under. What are some of the effects of having the few airlines operating in this continent going under?
Well, first of all, we hope not. We really hope not. Africa is a growing continent. The population is growing. The potentials of aviation growing and helping really improve the livelihood of the African nations and the African people is immense. Everybody understands this. We cannot afford, to have this sector just disappear. This sector is essential and critical for the continuation of African growth and African nations reaching their potentials. Without connectivity, without connecting people, without connecting the continent to the international communities, without allowing trade to take place, without allowing tourism to take place, we will be in a very unfortunate situations. That's why we really cannot afford, to let these companies go. And we're not only talking about airlines, by the way. We're talking about all the supporting functions: airports, air navigation services, ground handlers, aircraft financiers and lessors, insurance companies, manufacturing, horticultural, fisheries, trades. The entire supply chain beyond only the aviation sector will be impacted. And as such, immediate actions really need to take place to keep the industry alive, to open up, use the proper measures that have been published by international organizations, and allow Africa to be reconnected again.
While governments are trying to do their bit in their own little manner, what can airlines do to ensure that even amid the pandemic, they stay afloat?
Well, airlines are doing everything they could, quite honestly. They've been, doing an excellent job in terms of curtailing their costs. They've been renegotiating contracts with service providers. They've been doing everything possible, to save as much of the little cash reserves that they had. But the best of airlines around the world, not only in Africa, the average cash reserves would last 2 to 3 months. And we've been in a lockdown situation now for much longer than that, which says that on their own, they will not be able to do it.
Okay. Now,
they need help. They need capital injections. They need, relaxations of rules. They need governments to come forward and put the necessary guarantees to allow them, bank loans with very low or no interest rate. They need governments to really, lift some of the taxes, lift some of the charges, and allow them to stay afloat.
Africa holds the least share in terms of global passengers at 2%. And the pandemic has come, and that number has definitely taken a hit. Africa will make losses this year, despite the fact that they've been operating on losses. Beyond the pandemic, what needs to be done to restore passenger confidence in the aviation and also ensure that more people opt for aviation as their ideal means of travel?
Absolutely right. Africa has 2% share of the global travel. However, Africa has one of the fastest growing markets worldwide, and will continue to do so, specifically if we take into account the African population is supposed to by 2050. And in that case, African aviation and African travel would really play a major role in connecting Africa, connecting this massive population, creating necessary jobs, creating the environment, for government where feed, provide health care, and create sustainable jobs and opportunities, for instance. Now, air travel is an efficient sector, is an efficient industry that could play a vital role in helping governments to achieve their strategic plans and to provide the proper livelihood to African people and African nations.
Okay.
2% is expected to grow much faster, stronger, if we move into the right directions with the proper policies, proper procedures, government oversights, relaxations of rules, removing restrictions, allowing Africa really to reach its potential.
Okay, great. Now, as we almost come to a close, the pandemic has disrupted almost all sectors. Nothing is going back to the old normal that it was as is right now. We are talking about a new normal. I want to find out from you, how will this pandemic impact aviation trends in the future?
Well, the impact is going to remain with us for quite some time. Traffic levels of 2019 will not go in, we will not be able to reach back to those levels not until 2023. We know that. However, the current measures that are put in place to ensure the safety and security of traveling publics and to assure governments that importation of cases or exportation of COVID-19 cases will not happen. Those are put in place as temporary measures, and we hope that once a vaccine is found, once a cure is found, all those restrictions and all those measures. However, aviation is a resilient industry. We have been hit before by other epidemics. We have been hit before by economic blowouts. Nothing like this, I agree. I submit that we have never seen anything like this. However, we've learned our lessons and we are resilient. Humankind is resilient and will come over this crisis. We will rebuild the industry and we will work together, all the stakeholders together, governments together, working for the benefit, of the continent and the nations. And one last point, I really need to emphasize that we really need to work together, not in separations. Governments cannot continue to fight COVID-19 nations and protect their peoples by, having these lockdowns. Governments will not be able to do so. They have to adapt. They have to use best practices. They have to use the best of measures that have been published by international organizations, and they have to fight COVID, rebuild the industry, rebuild their economies, and we on our feet again.
Al-Bakri, I have about 30 seconds left on the clock, and I want to find out from you very briefly, of what importance is it to the African economy to revive the aviation industry?
Well, nobody can dispute the contributions of the aviation sector to African economies. And that has been demonstrated, by the way, during this crisis. We couldn't have transported medical equipments, medicine, protection equipments, and everything that is needed really to keep, people safe and secure. So going forward, really, we cannot reach its potentials without the aviation sectors. We have to keep it. We have to save the millions of jobs, and we have to make sure that the 35 billion worth of collective GDP contributions is really protected for Africa to continue to grow as we go into the future.
Muhammad Ali Al-Bakri, IATA Regional Vice President for the African markets and the Middle East, coming to us live from Jordan. Thank you for making time, Ali.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure having you. Let's hope that by 2023 or maybe sooner, should there be a vaccine, we'll see improvement and you'll still come on the show and talk to us about that, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And we hope to see you all, either nationally.
Okay, thank you so much. We take another break. When we come back, Vincent Odhiambo brings you what's trending on the social media with regards to today's conversation. Keep it Metropole TV.
Thank you. I hope that was helpful.